Happy Tuesday, all my frenemies and friends and family, fans and followers, just my old friends that I've been knowing forever. Thank you all for clicking in. Alan, Billy, good to see y'all. Daryl, howdy kid. Yeah, I'm gonna come up with some good stuff to tell you today. Hey Scott, Josh, thank you Josh. Your stuff went out today. It's really awesome, man. I'm so thankful that I have that stuff and get to share it, and it's like jewelry. Matter of fact, it's man jewelry. Hey, Jack, Charles, Bradford Nash. All we need is cash now, and then we can have cash Nash. Ron. Hey, Ricky, Matt. Wow, cool names, man. What? Why you send me that frowny face? I don't get it. Hey, Edward. Man, that's a racing man right there. If you look up racing in the dictionary, it's got a picture of Edward, man. Old Big Ed there. Chris, driving out there. Be careful out there on that. May God shine his light through you to others. Thank you, my brother. Happy Tuesday. Michael, Charlie, there you are. I knew you was coming, Charlie. Dan, hope y'all hear me okay. John, I'm so thankful for your signed on here. Yep, cool name. Steven, we need Cash, man. Where's Cash? I want to introduce Cash to Nash one day. That'd be fun. Kathy, I'm not making fun of y'all's name. I just think it's cool. Y'all know I'm not making fun of you, right? Well, kind of, sort of, but don't get mad about it. Everybody's feelings are too fragile these days. We got to man up a little bit and be, okay, ladies, too. We got to, hey, Georgie, thanks for helping out today, my man. Great friends, good people on here. Thank y'all. I'm so thankful. You're not late. Chuck, there you are. Thank you, loud and clear. I hear you, too. Thanks for the thumbs up, you guys. Thanks for the people signing on. Look at this right here, y'all. 140 anniversary, man. 140 week anniversary. Isn't that cool? Hey, Wendy. It is great, man. Tech Talk Tuesday number 140. I was telling some friends of mine from another country last night. I said, you know, there's a future pro stock racer right there. I see his last name, Salicari. I think he's going to be a famous racer. I saw it on the internet. Hey, Steph, Riddell. God bless you, man. You too, Riddell. Hey, I just wanted to tell y'all that I was talking to these fellas last night, Terry, and they were talking about doing this tech talk deal, and they watch it all the way over in these other countries. That it was like 140 weeks. I said, you know what? 6:01 in Eastern and 5:01 in Nashville time. I don't know what that is. That might be Central. But anyway, wherever it is, I just wanted to tell you guys that I wouldn't have bet money, a small amount of money, that I would do anything at 6:01 or 5:01 every Tuesday for 140 weeks in a row. I wouldn't have never known that. That's unbelievable. So this is what I wanted to thank all y'all for. I have accountability is something that many of us don't really use that much in our, especially these days. Hey, Donald. And if I skip your name, I'm sorry, man, Charlie and Jerry, because I'm going to try and stick to the script. Well, I don't have a script. I'm just going to blab for a few minutes. But I just want to tell you that accountability is a very powerful tool that some of us don't have, because loners and people that work by themselves don't really have accountability. But when we were in business, I had employees that we were accountable to. I had teammates, I had customers, clients, I had creditors, I had vendors. We had to be so accountable to people. We had to do everything when we said we would, and it taught us so much about life. And now I have all of y'all, Sean, Tim, all y'all, that y'all don't hold me accountable like, George, you have to be here. No, but I have this sense of responsibility that the good Lord gave me, and all of you guys that come here every week right here and say, we want to hear what you got to say, George. We want to share these ideas and these experiences with you. And it holds me accountable in a way that is so powerful that I would pull over the side of the road, or I would stop wherever I was and go and say, Tech Talk now, and jump on. And I also want to tell you that because all of y'all are so great and nice, I feel like that I'm not even nervous. I can do this without being nervous. because I'm just going to talk about what I think I know. I'm not going to talk about stuff I don't know and try and fool you. I'm only going to talk about what I think I know. And I want to tell you a real quick story, and I'm going to switch back over to me. Now, I just wanted you guys to see this 140 and how many weeks in a row that was, but I'm going to switch over to me on the camera for a minute. I want to tell you a quick story. Okay, thank y'all. There you are. There you are. You tuned in on the old man. Eventually, I'm going to have these out for people that buy cams. They might even come with a 30-30, but this is a Star Cam shirt, and that kind of cool. We're not planning on shipping shirts or selling shirts because the shipping costs more than the shirt. So, but if you buy a 30-30 cam, eventually we're going to, when we get enough shirts and enough 30-30 cams, we're going to make that part of the cool package. It'll be fun. So I'm excited about this. This is news for us. It also has, how many years? 22 years and Nashville, Tennessee on it. We hadn't been in Nashville 22 years. We only been here about a year. But I also wanted to share, people ask me all the time about, I read on the internet and I see you guys and I read about stuff, and there's a lot of questions online, and people talk about, not on Harley Davidsons, but on racing. People talk about vacuum pumps. And the vacuum pump, the first vacuum pump that I know about, was used to create the system that the car would operate off of, to have more vacuum, so the power brakes would work well, and maybe some vacuum headlight actuators on the really old Corvettes, and power windows were vacuum operated, and there was a lot of vacuum needed on cars. So they had these little electric pumps that they put to create a little more vacuum than the engine can pull, because some of the really fast cars back in the 60s and 70s, not really the 70s, but 60s mostly, they had camshafts that were really big, which is my specialty. Now, I even got a t-shirt that says so. But the camshafts were so big and the overlap was so big that there wasn't much manifold vacuum. And this doesn't have anything to do with the vacuum pumps that we use. But there's two, and they get confused. You have manifold vacuum and you have crankcase vacuum. You have manifold pressure and you have crankcase pressure. And we have learned over the years, yeah. I see you. But anyway, I wanted to show and tell a little bit about a vacuum pump. The electric vacuum pumps that were used in the automotive industry, I think one of our racing friends back, and the big engine guys, the ones with the 500 cubic inch and the small blocks and big blocks and the Chryslers and the Hemis and the Fords, their engines were too big to use a little baby electric vacuum pump. So we had this little small pro stock engines, Suzuki's, little Kawasaki Suzuki's. They were only, I don't remember how big they were, 80 cubic inches, maybe 90 cubic inches, and we turned a lot of RPM. And one of our competitors, I think it may have been the late, great Dave Schultz, I think he got a vacuum pump off of a Cadillac. And he put it on his Kawasaki Pro Stocker, and they put it on the dyno, and they found a little horsepower. And of course, nobody knew why, but if you put a vacuum pump on there and it created more horsepower, then you would run the vacuum pump at the racetrack. But you had to turn it on when nobody could hear it. You had to hide it where nobody could see it, because it was a little bit of a horsepower gain. And when everybody was running similar, a little 4 or 5 horsepower advantage when you only had 150 or 200 horsepower, you needed it, 4 or 5 horsepower. Hey, hang 1 second, I got to run. I'm back. I'm sorry I left. I heard Jackie fussing or hollering, and I had to go see, man. That's number one in the world, Hey, Steve. Hey, JJ. Hey, Russ. I just want to tell you, now after Jackie's kept me all these years and stayed with me, if she hollers, I run, even if I'm doing Tech Talk Tuesday live. But everything was fine. She was good. I think she takes care of her mom 24/7. Her mom's 90-something years old, and whenever Nana needs something, we jump and run. Like, no matter if you're like on live TV or Tech Talk, we run. But everything's good. Everybody's happy. Thank y'all. But back to my story about the vacuum pump. So we had to use it because we didn't know why, but I wanted to know why. So we studied it and studied it and studied it. And one of my friends that runs in the NASCAR Cup stuff 30 years ago told me that they can't use vacuum pumps, but having a little bit of negative pressure in the crankcase could create some more horsepower by helping the ring seal. And then, of course, once it came out, this is a story I've told before, but I want to tell it again. Thin, super thin, lightweight pistons, super thin little 80-wall wrist pins, and vacuum pumps all hit the scene at the same time. So when you got these, you had 120-wall pins that were fine, and then somebody decided one day on the internet or on TV, or somebody that was a racing hero got some really lightweight wrist pins made and some lightweight pistons made, and they qualified at the front. So they figured that it was really the lightweight parts that helped them qualify at the front. So then they also found, a little bit later, they found a vacuum pump and put it on it, and they started burning up wrist pins, and they started burning up pistons, and they started burning up other parts in the engine, because we didn't understand, the engine builders didn't understand. But when you if you have 40 pounds of oil pressure and you pull 10 inches of vacuum, you may only have, and there's math to prove this out, because the vacuum in the crankcase is measured in inches of depression, and the oil pressure is measured in pressure per square inch. So pounds per square inch, sorry. So if you have a little bit of negative pressure in the crankcase, it would pull a little bit of oil pressure away, but it's only 2 pounds. So you went from 40 psi to 38 psi, and then the wrist pins started flexing, and they would get burned up, and then the pistons would start burning up, and the pistons would start flexing and breaking. And all of us super brainiacs assumed that the vacuum pump caused the wrist pin problem. They thought all of us thought the vacuum pump was pulling the oil off of the pistons. Can you imagine how ridiculous that is? The vacuum pump has so much pressure. It's like a vacuum pump in a flow bench, like 10 vacuum pumps in a 1020 flow bench, and they pull all this negative pressure. This little vacuum pump pulls so much pressure that we assumed it was sucking the oil off of the wrist pins. It was sucking the oil off the rods. This vacuum was so huge, it was sucking oil off the cylinder walls. And that made the wrist pins burn up. But that wasn't what it was. It was the fact that the vacuum allowed us to run more RPM than we've ever run, because the vacuum under the top ring was able to hold the ring tight to the piston for more RPM. We were able to keep this ring sealed because of the crankcase pressure, negative pressure under the ring. We were able to keep this top ring sealed to the piston. Therefore, we were able to rev it up another 500 RPM. And the wrist pins and the pistons held up okay at the RPM we were running. But when we stuck another 400 or another 500 RPM in there, the pounds, tons of weight at that RPM of a couple of ounces of piston and rings and wrist pins, all that stuff was flexing and bending. And when a wrist pin bends, it isn't round anymore. And when the wrist pin bends, it goes oval shape in the piston would explode off of it. So all of us assumed that the vacuum was causing wrist pin problems. So even today, you can go right on some of the internet hero forums and you can say, I would run more than 10 inches of vacuum on my engine, but my engine builder says, don't go higher than 10 inches, 12 inches, 15 inches, because it will ruin your wrist pins. We can't allow vacuum to pull the oil off of our parts. I'm telling y'all, this is my opinion. I'm not nervous about this because I'm only talking about my opinion. I'm telling you, man, put thick wrist pins in it. Put stout wrist pins. It won't bend. Put stiff pistons in it, and throw all the vacuum you can at it. Get all you can of the atmosphere. If you go to Gainesville and the barometer's 30-10, you ought to be able to pull 25 or 26 inches of vacuum off of the barometer into the bottom end, and it will only show a couple of pounds of oil pressure down. And if you go to Denver, where the barometer is only 23, you should be able to pull 21 or 22 inches of vacuum based on the atmospheric pressure, because that's all we're measuring it off of. You can't get more vacuum than the atmosphere pressure. So there's a certain percentage that you have to have, and I just want to tell you guys that I just wanted to share with you. And then that leads to my favorite personal story about the vacuum pump. So we got us a vacuum pump, and I bought one from Gary Tonglet. He had this really cool pump. It had a little electric motor, and it had a little one cylinder on one end of the motor, and it had another little one cylinder. So it was a 2-cylinder, one electric motor with 2 cylinders with little pistons and little rings and little rods. And this little thing we turned the electric motor on, and it would pump, these pistons would pump, and it would pull vacuum, and we hooked it to our Suzuki Pro Stocker, and we picked up horsepower. And then in 1999, we got a big budget. We became the Team Winston, and Angel was our rider. And we had 50 pounds of ballast on her motorcycle. So we said, 50 pounds of ballast. Okay, so one vacuum pump is good. Oh, let's put 2 vacuum pumps. So we put 2 Tonglet pumps on it. So that's 4 cylinders, these little pistons, and they were pulling vacuum so we could get 20 inches of vacuum. We didn't know anything about how to make the rings better, the pistons, the cylinders better. We were just children. We were just infants in the engine building industry back then. That's a long time ago, y'all. 20-something years ago, maybe almost 30 years ago. But so we took a little ballast off and got the vacuum pumps on there. So then we put another vacuum pump. Then we put another vacuum pump. Pretty soon we had 4 Tonglet pumps on the bike. We had 2 in the back, 2 in the front, and we ran extra batteries. And when I would turn the vacuum, I would let her crank the bike up. Then we turned the vacuum pump on, and it would sound like a 2-stroke weed whacker going off on that thing. And thank goodness the exhaust pipe kept the noise down. But we were able to go from 0 crankcase to 24 or 25 inches of vacuum in 1 second. And when we ran one vacuum pump down the track going in the low 7s with the motorcycle, we would go from 20 inches at the starting line to about 15 inches at the finish line, because the ring seal was so bad every time we'd go high RPM, high RPM, high RPM. Every time we'd go over 10 or 11,000 RPM, it would just, the vacuum would fall. So the more vacuum pumps we put on it, the more ballast we could take off. So we were making weight with vacuum pumps, and each one gave us a little bit more horsepower. It was about summertime 1999, and the whole Pro Stock Bike group, there was about 25 of us entered there. We were at Brainerd, Minnesota at the North Star Nationals, I believe it was called. I don't remember what they called it. And a lot of the teams were complaining to the president of the Pro 2 organization, which was Steve Johnson at the time. And he gets a little pad and he writes down everybody's complaints, and then he would have a meeting on Saturday night or Friday night at the races. So he had all Pro Stock riders and crew chiefs and team owners come to this meeting. So we were all sitting around there on mini bikes and 4-wheelers. There was about 20 of us in a circle. And he says, okay, we got this complaint. We want to vote for the rules of 2020. We want to vote for the rules for 2000, the year 2000, which was 22 years ago. He said, we want to have a limit on how many vacuum pumps we can have on a motorcycle. So I said, oh, here we go. Angel's like, got her head down, you know. So I'm going to do some quotes. So Steve goes around, he says, he looks at Ron Ayers and he says, how many vacuum pumps for next year? Ron says, 1. He goes over to Tonglet, 1. He goes over to Underdog. Underdog says 1. He goes to Vance and Hines. They say 1. I'm sitting here watching this, shaking my head. And when it got to Angel, they said, how many vacuum pumps do you think we should have next year? And she said 4. And everybody busted out loud. Everybody can't have 4. But we could have 4. So we were taking advantage of it. Well, guess what? They changed the rules for 2020 that you could only have 1 vacuum pump. Well, okay, we put all the ballast back on, but now we learned where to put the ballast. So we went faster yet by putting all the ballast in the front, making the bike heavy on the nose, and we only had 1 vacuum pump. So I called Bob Blackwell for NHRA Tech Man. I called him up and I said, hey man, what's the rule say? He's 1 vacuum pump. I said, Tonglet pump's got 2 pumps on it, 1 electric motor, 2 pumps. He said, let me get back to you. So he calls around, talks to all the NHRA Tech people, and he talks around to all them, and they say, 1 electric motor. Okay. So he calls me back and he says, you can only have 1 electric motor. And I said, okay, you don't get mad now when you see my vacuum pump at the Gainesville next year. He said, what do you mean? And I said, I'm going to have 1 vacuum pump, 1 electric motor. It's going to be massive. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to get a mechanical supercharger. I'm going to get a 10-horse electric motor, and I'm going to get a bunch of batteries. I'm going to put a belt drive on it, and I'm going to pull a supercharger for my crankcase pressure, and it will be 1 vacuum pump. He said, oh, George, don't do that. I said, okay. So then I got in touch with a guy named Steve Fackett, lives up there in Pennsylvania, and he started a company called Star Machine. Really? Star Racing, Star Cams, Star Machine. Everybody thought for 10 years that was my company because I was so crazy about vacuum pumps and how much power it made and allowed us to rev up so high. So I talked to Steve, and Steve said, I'll build you a monstrosity. I'll build you the biggest bore, biggest stroke, biggest electric motor, and we'll put like a 6-to-1 gear drive on it, and we'll spin this thing to the moon, and we'll make instant pressure. So he built me a really cool vacuum pump, and we went out and we won 2000, 2001, 2002, 3 championships in a row with the biggest vacuum pump and pulling the most crankcase pressure and the least amount of burnt wrist pins of anybody in the field. And I know I'm bragging about it right now, but that's some history that really did happen. And next time we talk, I will tell you why the vacuum pump makes so much power. But right now, I have to go to something else that's important, and I'm going to share it with you. Flipping back over. I hope that was fun for you. Last week, we talked about cranking compression and corrected compression ratio and stuff. And I wrote a correction, 2 corrections. One, I said I left out about lifter preload when we were talking about the lifters. I said that we had to have it to make the cam lobe land smooth like an airplane coming in. I forgot to say, and I meant to say it, but I had 2 people remind me that the engine grows taller the hotter it gets. If you have an aluminum block, aluminum cylinder, aluminum head, and then the rock arms in aluminum stands, when it gets hot, it goes up, 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 up. And if you run a solid lifter with a push rod at 10 thou lash, when that gets hot, you could be all the way up to 30 lash. If you have 30 thousandths of lash in your 3030 Chevrolet Zora Arcus Duntov cam back in 1963, and you're running 30 thou lash, when the engine got hot and the heads got hot, the rock arm got further away from the camshaft, so the push rod would just about fall out. So the hydraulic lifters are perfect to preload the lifter with the piston down in the lifter, so that we can put a little bit of negative preload, put some preload in the lifter, so when the engine gets hot and grows and grows and grows, the lash stays consistent and you make some good power. So anyway, I'm going to tell you all some more about that. So I also said I wanted to clarify something about me closing the intake valve early and the cranking compression, okay? When you close the intake valve early, you add to cranking compression at cranking speed. If you close the intake valve later, you take away cranking compression at cranking speed. These are quotes from me. I wrote this down. Please don't be fooled once you get the later intake valve closing and you spin it up to the range you want to run it. Because when you get it up to your operating range, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 14,000, 13,000, wherever you run your engine up to, it can't remember or it can't know anything about cranking speed. It will be the right cylinder pressure and the right cylinder pressure for the RPM you run. It won't have nothing to do with cranking compression, because cranking compression is dictated by how fast the starter spins the engine. So if you spin the starter to 400 or 500 and you close the intake valve sooner and you put a camshaft in that increases your corrected compression ratio, you will have some control and you will have some results that you can see at cranking speeds. And I don't know one person tuned in that will watch me today, live, not tonight, tomorrow, and for the rest of our life on YouTube that cares what the cylinder pressure is at cranking speed. We care what the cylinder pressure is over here on the tachometer when we're going, that's where compression matters, and that's where cylinder pressure matters. So to finish, I said, trust me, it makes a lot more pressure up high where you operate rather than at cranking speed compression. I don't care how much compression it has at cranking speed. I only want to know how much cylinder pressure it has at operating speed. So when you have the right cam timing and the right operational speed, you have the most cylinder pressure when those two meet, and it's not at cranking speed. And that's not corrected compression ratio. And I'm not mad about it, and I'm not fussing at anybody. I just have my opinion. And I get run over sometimes about people saying, no, that cam won't work because it hurts my cranking compression. No. I don't care, man. You got automatic compression releases on your Milwaukee 8. You can put some cranking compression in it, but it won't rev up good. But because it makes cylinder pressure early. But cranking compression, putting a compression gauge in and pushing the starter button and it goes, that's a good number. That's a good number. But that doesn't tell you how much power you're going to make. All right, I'm off that tire. I'm through ranting about it. I wanted to spend just a quick minute and tell you about my friend Dan Parker. If you'll go back and look at YouTube on my channel, Star Racing GA, or you look at Tech Talk Tuesday number 26, you can find it in the archives. You can find it on Facebook. I want you to go look at Dan Parker. I was at his shop in Columbus, Georgia, and he had a red Corvette, and he's totally blind, and he was a Pro Mod car world champion back 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and he got into a terrible crash and totaled the Corvette he was driving, and he lost his eyesight. He became permanently blind. He lost both eyes. He can see nothing. He's been in the dark for over 10 years, and over that time, he has rebuilt his life, and he's got a beautiful, wonderful family and friends around him that have helped him. He put together a world land speed record attempt with a Corvette, and he went out last week to Spaceport in New Mexico, and he went 212 miles an hour with no eyesight in his Corvette, and he has a small block Chevy it's got 750 horsepower and got a little bit of nitrous on it, and he ran that thing on the runway at the Spaceport until he went over 211 miles an hour to set the Guinness Book World Records, and he did it totally blind. And I love Dan and his girlfriend, Jennifer Stiegel, and they have been friends of mine forever and forever. Dan, even since he was a little boy, running his motorcycle over at Warner Robins and Phoenix City Dragway, and I'm very thankful to get to witness what he did. And I just wanted to share, if you guys go look at Blind Ambition, you get to see The Blind Machinist, Dan Parker on Facebook. He's done a couple TV shows along the way. He even had I think he had Jay Leno in the car with him one time. But he uses a GPS, I think it is, signal, and headset in his helmet that tells him a little left, a little right, a little left, a little right. And he's got the cojones to hold a throttle down over 200 miles an hour, totally blind. That's like, have you ever gone really fast in your car and you're going down the highway and it's going really fast, and the headlights go out in the middle of the dark and the moon ain't even shining and you just came into a curve? That's where Dan lives in his world right now, and I'm just thankful to know him, and I'm so impressed with his ambition and his abilities, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. Also, I overplayed my time. I got some more stuff to talk to you about. This is a good one here, but I've got more stuff to share, and listen to you guys. This feedback you sent me, these questions you sent me, matter to me. I will address them even privately or either on the air. But Tech Talk Tuesday 140 is built on feedback. It's built on all these operations of working together with you guys, and you guys sharing with me what you want to know about, what you would like to talk about. And I got great feedback today from several people about what I should talk about. And I'm not close to running out of cool stuff to talk about, because the good Lord blessed me with 50 years of racing experience, and I ran over more stuff than anybody I know to burn gasoline. Closest guy I know would be somebody that burns nitro, may have come close to burning up as much as me. But anyway, Tech Talk Tuesday 140 is in the books. May God bless y'all. Please follow. Please write me. Please feedback. Thank you. May God bless.